Welcome to the Orange Pew. It's so great to welcome everyone back to a summer episode. We're excited to have Bryce Lefebvre with us today. Welcome to the Orange Pew.
Thanks for having me.
Super comfortable.
Yeah, I was telling you, the church that I grew up in
Had no
cushion
padding
at all. It was
just a wooden pew.
And so I'm
So
calloused.
these are even better than that.
Yeah, it's an upgrade.
Slightly, yeah. We're excited to welcome you to hear your story. A reminder that this podcast is for the 3,000 people who are part of CLA. It's also a part of our network, which stretches across this great nation. Last month, we interviewed Jenny Caldwell. And if you didn't get an opportunity to hear that interview, I encourage you to go back to wherever you get your podcasts or to YouTube or to CLA's website. And listen, because Jenny was unique in the sense that she was kind of walking on both sides of that. She had opportunity to be on CLA's staff. We talked a little bit about CLA being recognized as one of the best Christian workplaces in North America recently, and what was that like? But she also was part of our network. And of course, that was a really important thing for us to do. Last month I said, Bryce, and I believe this so deeply in my heart, that CLA sends its best. And so you're our best. We're sending you into a campus development situation in Abbotsford.
Yeah.
So we're going to talk about that. Why Abbotsford? Where in Abbotsford? And how you're doing in this these early days of the launch. But before we get there, I think it would be good for our people and those that are listening to know a little bit about you, Bryce. And so why don't you tell us a little bit about where you came from?
Yeah.
And calling to ministry is always interesting. This sense that you're going to give your life to be a priest unto the Lord and to serve his house and his people. So tell us a little bit where you came from and how did you become a pastor?
Yeah. I grew up in Powell River, British Columbia. And
Shout out to Powell River.
Shout out to Powell River.
Yeah.
There's
Sunshine Coast.
something in the water. Ken Russell, you had a guest a couple weeks ago.
I was telling you that Ken Russell was on. We had 10,000 views for his show, and it went right across the nation, and I heard from people around the world. And so Ken is the superintendent of PUC, and his story began in Powell River.
Yeah, so great family friends. Fun fact, my first job ever was at Ken's mom's shop.
Oh, okay.
I was 7 years old.
It was like
like a Christian bookstore kind of thing.
Yeah, and a 7-Eleven or something.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah, wow.
And so I remember being 7 and just walked up and tried to get a job. And so, lots of really great connections. Like obviously they're great close family friends. The Demchucks are great close family friends. Just really feel privileged to come where I came from and to be a part of a great church there.
Evangel is a great church.
Evangel, and so that's born and raised there. Spent most of my whole life growing up there, and kind of like early on, again being part of a really great church, right? Like we had so much of even my family pastored in that church in different seasons. My Uncle John pastored there for a while. My grandma's sister and brother-in-law were our lead pastors for a while, the Sorgis. And just such a really big blessing to be a part of that kind of that tribe in the POC in that church growing up. And so for me, that's really where it started, the passion and longing to do local church ministry. I always kind of make the joke that I was born on that wooden pew of a Sunday night service, it felt like, because our church our family was just so involved, serving. And, my grandpa was an elder of our church for years and years. And so I think early on, and this was the 90s, right? Like I was born in 94. So it was, the height of fire and freedom, and that across our whole network, just a really great move of the Spirit. And so those Sunday night services where you see Granny Green doing victory laps around. And I remember being a kid just watching these things unfold and always being really captivated by it. Like always being, I had my Hot Wheels underneath as I'm a little kid, but I just remember moments being young and seeing God moving in the midst of his church and in people's lives, and just always being really drawn to it, really captivated by it. And so worship has always been a really big part of my life as well. So much of our family history is around music. And so that really became a staple and a big part of my calling. I think if I were to wrap it up as to why I'm here, why I'm a pastor, I think it really is just, nailed down to the fact that I had all these markers in my life where I encountered the presence of God, and my sole longing was just for people to experience that. And, didn't get into ministry to lead necessarily, or to preach, or to lead worship. And all those things are happening in my life as a byproduct of saying yes. But the driving force was, okay, I've encountered the Spirit of God and the presence of God, and it's radically transformed my life. And I want as many people as I could possibly ever see have that encounter and that experience.
And then you ended up in 4 really important years in a college called Summit Pacific. It's a Bible college in Abbotsford, and there you did an undergraduate degree in pastoral theology, and you met someone and got married.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about how God used that in your life to further solidify this call.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I mean, interesting even how we ended up at Summit. Like my brother and I, we were ready to go out to Australia and go to Hillsong College. And so we had all of our plans for that. And then Zach Wiley came and did a recruitment tour in our local church.
The Omega director
at the time.
Saved in West Kelowna, where we pastored.
Yep. And so Zach came and did a tour to recruit for the school. And both my brother and I just kind of felt this really strong pull of like, why are we going to Hillsong? Like this is right in our home base. This is right in our network, the people that we love and believe in. And so I think that was the moment of like, hey, so we changed our plans really fast. It was kind of that summer that we turned course really fast. He graduated 3 years before me, and then was waiting for me to finish up school. And so we changed our plans and headed off to Summit in 2012 was our freshman year. And so, yeah, I think at that point, we'll jump into a little bit more of story of like health and journey in that sense. But that was also a massive part of me kind of affirming like, hey, I'm called to ministry. I'm called to that my assignment is to be a pastor in a local church. And so when I went to Summit, I was like, I am serious about this. I'm going to do my 4 years, and I'm going to immerse myself in God's word and leadership development and local church ministry. And, everyone makes the bridal college joke. And I was like, that's not a thing for me. Yeah. No, I'm going there on a mission. And I think it was about 4 or 5 minutes on the first day that I walked past Rochelle in the hallway, my wife, and my plan changed. And so, she was in Omega her first year. And so Omega.
And where was she from?
From Terrace, up north.
So she's from up north, and you met and dated.
Yeah, we started dating in our second year. When I was at Summit, I was on a traveling team, and so we went and
worship team.
Led worship at different youth conferences and youth retreats. And so, my first 2 years, I was gone almost every weekend of both semesters, and so it was like a very heavy schedule. And then her first year, she was in Omega, and she was the student leader on her Omega team. And so, we both were like, "Hey, we're doing a lot of stuff. Like, let's just kind of connect over the summer." And if it goes anywhere, it goes anywhere.
And it went somewhere. You
got married.
A little girl. And now, when we're recording this, I said, we're on? Yeah. And you're like, we're on as long as we don't have a baby.
Yes.
So you're like on the edge of having number 2.
Yeah.
And in fact, when this rolls out in July,
we'll have number 2.
We'll have number 2. So you have a beautiful wife and 2 amazing babies. And let's talk a little bit now about I know not everything was great in your life. You had challenges, And I guess we probably shouldn't expect life to be without challenges. And tell us a little bit about some of the shocking health challenges that you faced and actually continue to face.
Yeah, no, absolutely. When I was 16 years old, I found myself in Children's Hospital in Vancouver here, fighting for my life, and had a life-altering encounter with the Holy Spirit and with the person of Jesus. And not to jump the gun, but diagnosed with Crohn's disease.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I've lived with now for a long time.
It's interesting. So let me pause there. So Crohn's is debilitating. And Paul said, I prayed many times, and the Lord didn't take something from Paul. And then he says, Jesus says to Paul, my grace is sufficient for you. My power is made perfect in your weakness.
Yeah.
You will walk with this. And so it seems that you've prayed for healing. And at this point, healing hasn't come.
Yeah.
But I would say that verse, his grace is sufficient, Christ's power is made perfect in your weakness, has been an important one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, when I was 16, I was at a youth conference in Comox Valley at Northgate, Consumed Conference, and so was there, and it was great. It was a great weekend. Again, really from a young age, I knew I wanted to be into ministry, and so all my friends are, let's go longboarding, and I'm in my room listening to sermons and worship music, and my mom's saying, can you please just go hang out with your friends? And I'm like, no, I need to immerse myself in the presence of God if I'm going to do this thing called ministry. And so I was looking forward to that conference a lot. And first day was great. And then that evening, we were kind of all sleeping in the gym at the church there, and woke up around 3 a.m. and was just sweating so much, and just felt horrible, felt so bad, was freezing, but just like the worst fever and chills. And so I didn't sleep at all that night, pretty much. Just had this subtle, tense, sharp pain in my stomach. And then finally got, maybe 30, 40 minutes of sleep, woke up the next day, felt totally fine. We went through the whole day, the whole conference, and I was like, that was the weirdest thing. Maybe it was the Pizza Hut from 7-Eleven, who knows? And then next night, same thing happened. And so it happened all 3 days we were at the conference. Terrible night, totally fine in the day. And so went home and kind of explained it to my mom. Was like, I don't understand what is happening right now. And she's like, okay, well, just, get some rest. And so all of those symptoms that I was experiencing kind of kept on just becoming more and more consistent and not really going away. And so I was like, man, something is off. Something isn't right here. And so I remember one night I was just sleeping on the couch, and my brother kind of nudged me to be like, hey, watch this thing on TV. And I just remember screaming blue murder. And so my mom runs in, starts disciplining my brother, and he's like, I didn't do anything. And it just felt like I was just getting stabbed. Like, it was just so sharp and so painful. And then just kind of persisted for a few more days. And I remember one morning waking up and just thinking to myself, okay, what is going on? Like, this isn't normal. And I went to get out of bed, and I was just completely paralyzed by pain. Like, I couldn't move at all. I was trying to yell for my mom, could barely get anything out. So we went into the hospital at that point, and they just said, hey, you got the flu. Go home. And so we're like, man, this does not feel like a flu. And so we go home, and same thing, just a terrible day and night. Go back, send us home again. At this point, I think both my mom and I are getting a little bit agitated too. We're like, okay, we're not getting taken seriously. And so finally we go in. At this point, it's just really bad. I'm like projectile vomiting in the ER room, and they're like, what? And they're just really not saying much at all. And so my mom just finally fights to be like, can you please admit him and just watch him? Because something's clearly not right. And so then they said, okay, yeah, you have Norwalk flu. So we'll go and we'll put you in a room. And so I was in the hospital in Powder River for 6 days. And then finally on the 6th day, a nurse came into my room, and this, like, I was in such bad shape, like barely eating or drinking. We were changing my sheets on my hospital bed like 5-6 times a night because I was just sweating through them so much. And so finally a nurse comes up and says, I'm just going to listen to Bryce's stomach. And so, like, do the whole thing, get the instrument. And at that point, my stomach was like so distended. Like, I literally looked like I was like 6 months pregnant. Like, I had this massive stomach. And I'll never forget the look on her face. She goes to listen to my stomach, and she just freezes completely. And her face goes so white, and she just runs out of my room yelling for a doctor. And so at this point, we're like, okay, what's going on? And so they come in and, they say to my parents, we don't hear any noises at all. Like, there's nothing happening. It's completely solid in there. And so they said, you have 40 minutes to go home and get whatever you want. But in 40 minutes, he'll be on a helicopter going to Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And so my dad rushes home to go get stuff. My mom stays with me. And at that point, they just like start taking me and doing a bunch of medical things without explaining anything. So I'm in pure chaos, not knowing what's happening. And so at that point, they're putting a tube down my nose to essentially drain what was in my stomach. But everything was so urgent. They had a size for like a full-grown adult, but I was a 16-year-old kid. And they were like, well, we don't have time to change it. So they're just, ramming it down my nose, and then get flown out to Children's. We land in BC Children's, and there was about 20 doctors and nurses on the helipad waiting for me. And they rushed me into a room. And at that point, it just was chaos. Everyone's running around saying, this is an acute 10, this is an acute 10. And I remember at that point just being really, really angry at God. And I was thinking to myself, hey, I have already said yes. Mm-hmm. Like, I have not walked in any teenage angst or rebellion. Like, I'm that kid. I'm serving in church, started leading worship when I was 13 years old, drumming when I was 7. Like, we were in the local church. Mm-hmm. And I remember just being so mad at God, saying, like, I have given you my life. I've already said that I will do anything that you want. There's this one quote that says, I'm loose change in the pocket of the king. He can spend me any way he wants. And that's really been a life motto for me. And so I'm like, I have already said, spend me any way you want, God. And this is how you repay me. Like, after all of that obedience and discipleship in my life, here I am about to die. And at that moment, I remember just my vision went blurry. And I just saw this big gold sky and this really big gate and this blurry figure stepped into frame, so to speak. And I just remember so audibly, like thunderously cutting through the noise. I just heard, I haven't forsaken you. I'm going to heal and restore you, and it will be for my glory. And when you're watching a movie and like a bomb goes off and there's just that ring and everything feels slow motion, but there's still chaos. That was what I experienced. But the peace that I felt, as I've never felt anything like it. Just in that moment, there was so much peace, and I knew that God was with me. I ended up having a massive bowel blockage, so that's what was going on. And so I had just toxin eating away my insides, and so a lot of my major organs were shutting down. My bladder was about to burst. Like, it was just, I was on my deathbed.
Your experience, at CLA, we spent 10 weeks going through the book of Revelation. Your dream, your vision experience sounds a bit like something apocalyptic or from the book of Revelation. I know that obviously a traumatic incident like that has deep influence. I know that your health has stabilized. You manage your Crohn's, although there's sort of a residue to the disease. I want to ask you about how you currently are able to function with some of these occurrences that take place.
Yeah. No. My story has just been so unique. My mom has Crohn's disease as well, so it's a genetic thing, and she has suffered for years and years, has had multiple bowel surgeries. That's just not my story. Like God, the healing that I've had is just different and unique. So I spent a lot of time in children's. By the time I left, I was about 82 pounds because they kept on prepping me for a big bowel surgery. So they wanted to give me a whole colostomy bag and everything, and so it was about 2 weeks that I just had a couple ice chips and nutrition through IV. And the day that I left children's, for the most part, I've been in remission ever since. And so, 16, I'm 30 now. It's been a lot of years of
So
pretty
by
much
God's
living
grace,
yeah.
one day at a time, 1 month at a time, 1 year at a time, 15 years go by, but you're still cautious.
Yeah, and I think that's the weird thing is through the whole story, I've been really blessed. I actually have one of the top 50 specialists in North America who oversees my care and is my specialist, and so he monitors me a lot. I get blood work every 8 weeks, and so they're always checking my inflammation numbers, and that was what was weird is when. I'd have numbers where it's like you should be in the fetal position on the floor. Your numbers are so high, and I'm sitting there smiling, and it's like, well, I feel fine, and so that was so weird, and I was so confused too. I was like, okay, God, why don't you just go all the way? Like you've healed me in this weird way where I still have the disease, and on paper I'm sick, but I'm functioning mostly as a normal human. Like, what are we doing here? And so. But even with that, I take medication every 8 weeks. And so believe in that too. Like God heals in a number of ways. And one of the ways that he heals is through wisdom given to people to craft medications. And so I've been on that. It's even, a huge blessing from God. It's about $6,000 a pop every 2 months. And I've been doing that for 16 years. Wow. And my specialist has paid for it in full. And so even that's just a huge blessing. But yeah, walk fatigue is a really big thing. So stress is a massive reality for people with Crohn's. And so even my specialist has said for years, do you really want to be a pastor? This is a terrible vocation for someone with your condition. And exactly what you said, hey, grace that sustains. If I'm obedient to what he's called me to, he's going to see me through it.
What are some of the disciplines that you walk with to keep yourself in a place of shalom, in the green pasture along quiet waters so that you're not stressed?
Man, still learning. That's been a journey for me. I think even just how I'm wired, rest is hard. And so I think over the last couple of years, getting to a place of an actual discipline of Sabbath has been really important. 1 day a week where it's an actual Sabbath that we try to practice well to rest and to recharge. And, a lot of my story based on even just like some pain and trauma that I experienced as a kid is, I'm a huge people pleaser and I have to hold myself to a really high standard and I have a lot of ambition. And so that's a recipe for burnout, which I've experienced. And so I think it's just a daily coming back to keeping the main things, and just reminding myself too, like, okay, when I go to sleep at night, Christ is still building his church. And the people that I pastor and the things that I lead, God cares about those things way more than I ever could.
Right.
And it's his. Like, he's the one who's going to build it. He's the one who's going to shepherd people and care for people. So I think that helps me put the stress aside. And
so that's an element of faith.
Yeah.
You started at CLA, actually at our Coquitlam campus, and then you went to Kamloops, and then you returned to CLA, and you're a great worship leader. You've been involved in young adults and our gatherings on Sundays. And tell us a little bit about those years as a learning ministry.
Yeah.
What lessons did God teach you through those early years of pastoral ministry, and how did you find balance and keep focused?
Yeah. A lot of painful lessons. I think in many ways I feel thankful that I learned some of the lessons in ministry that I did early on in my ministry and could just kind of get those things out of the way. Coming out of Bible college, I talked a lot more than I listened. And I think I love the local church. Rochelle always says, stay in your lane. And that's so hard for me because I love every aspect of the local church. I believe it's the hope of the world, and I'm just wired that way. And so I think for me, one thing that really matters a lot is the why. And so I love to just ask why. Well, why are we doing that? Or could we do it a little bit better? Or, I'm that classic strength finders where you got strategic and futuristic, and at times it can be an Achilles heel when left unchecked. And so I think coming out of Bible college, I learned a lot in that sense. I was maybe that kid coming out fiery and
idealistic,
not knowing reality, and naive to the day in and day out of actually pastoring people.
So then you hit the wall.
Hit the wall.
the wall of reality.
Hit the wall of reality. I would say I hit the wall in that first year in Coquitlam. And then we moved on to a new role after a season of church planning, which was really fun and exciting. But I was like, I don't know if I'm on the same page, and this is a young church plant, and so we can't afford to not be on the same page if this thing's going to thrive. And so moved on to a new season. After
so you were trying to find something that fit your passion, your skill level.
In a really naive way, because I didn't know what it was. I was looking for something that I didn't know what it was.
Because you didn't know yourself?
Because I didn't know myself.
I see.
I had no idea I had no idea what my actual philosophy and conviction around ministry was.
So that was forming.
Yeah, very forming, very forming. And so then, I found myself in an associate pastor role at a church, and was there for 3 years. And that was the wall. That was, emotional, healthy spirituality. That was the wall for sure. It was a very challenging season that led to a ministry burnout for me. And so I say that with weight in my voice, one of those statistics of a 23-year-old pastor who burnt out hard. And
you and Rochelle were involved together.
Yeah.
And when you felt like I gotta grab a parachute and jump off this plane to save my life, what were the things that helped you get restoration after being burned out?
Yeah. I mean, I think that was the hard part too, is I think I didn't recognize it. I think I recognized it, but I didn't want to admit it. And so even like, as we processed through that, I think I felt like maybe a little bit of guilt that we left Coquitlam too soon. I was like, that was a stretching experience, and maybe we just left too soon. And so when we were in our second appointment of ministry, it was like, we don't want to leave too soon. And the lead pastor that we were serving alongside, he had really gone through some hardship too in the church that he was pastoring, and followed a leader that was there for 25 years, and that's never easy. And so he even, self-admittedly would say he wasn't in the most healthy spot. And when a leader's unhealthy, a culture can be unhealthy. And so there was lots of things where we're like, oh man, how are we doing right now? How's this going? And I think because of our season at Coquitlam, it was like, well, we don't want to leave too soon. Like, if we're just getting stretched, there's a difference between something being challenging and something being unhealthy. And we saw so many of our friends leaving ministry and leaving leaving appointments of ministry because it was just a little challenging, but not necessarily unhealthy. And so we're like, well, we want to stick it out. But there were signs and markers of unhealth. And so finally, it just took a couple conversations with some really good mentors who gave us permission. I felt like that's what we needed. We needed permission to say, hey, like, it's okay that this isn't working out right now and that it's not a healthy spot.
So humility, mentors, permission to lay something down because your soul, your marriage, your life is more important than...
Yeah, that was it. I I completely had situational depression. Like I was numb to everything.
So you stepped out, and just give me a couple of highlights. I want to get on to Abbotsford plant here in a second. So give me a couple of key elements to restoration
Yeah.
During that time. How
Yeah.
did the Lord restore your soul? What were the key elements to that?
Yeah. I think it was time. That was a big thing.
You needed time.
We needed time.
You needed a rest.
And we needed to rest. And so after we resigned from our roles there was a church that reached out to us, and we had a few conversations with them. And I think we just came to the moment of like, this would be so dumb to jump back into pastoring again. Like we need time. Because at that point I was like, I don't even know if I want to do ministry. And I had a really good conversation with someone who said, hey, don't jump off a train when you're in a tunnel. Like get to open pasture before you make a decision like that. Get to a place of health. And so that was it's like, man, we just need to get to a place of health before we start actually talking big decisions of things. And so that's kind of how we came back to CLA. I applied and came back to CLA as a graphic designer. And so we just knew that I needed space, and both Rochelle and I, we just needed space. And so space with intentionality, because I think it's one thing to say that.
What was the intentionality?
I think it just was the commitment to actually say, okay, let's heal. Like, let's get help. Let's have conversations with people. Let's start to unpack maybe pain and trauma that are
So Christian
root
counseling.
Causes. Yeah. Like some
reading,
some good counseling, some really good friends to walk with us through it.
So there was accountability and transparency.
Yeah.
Okay, so you came back to CLA, and I want to talk about that just briefly, and about the Abbotsford opportunity to plant a campus. When you came on staff, you jumped in feeling healthy after working in the comms department for a while, and re-engaged first with young adults, and then as our gather pastor, who helped oversee all things Sunday. And you're a great worship leader, and you've tried to maintain a great culture here. CLA has a great lay volunteer culture when it comes to worship. And what were the things that prepared you to be a campus pastor? What were the things that prepared you to launch into this faith initiative to plant in Abbotsford?
I think probably a really big thing was in those 11 months that we took off from ministry was actually the height of the pandemic too. And so even in that reality, we, like with my Crohn's and with my medication, as COVID reared its head, as everyone's like, what's happening with this thing? My specialist says, hey, we have no idea what this is going to do to people who are on a biologic medication, which is what I'm on, and people who have Crohn's. And so in the midst of that 11 months, 2.5 of those months were full lockdown in a basement suite. So I had a lot of time to think and pray and try to figure out what is actually my philosophy of ministry, what is my calling, all of those things. And so I think lots of reading in that time too, and lots of reflecting on, Eugene Peterson and Henry Nouwen. And I love some of the things that Nouwen says about pastoral ministry. Even just to paraphrase, pastoral ministry is putting your own search for God on display for others and inviting them into that. And I think that's really what helped me understand that the role of pastoring is always people. It's people. That's why we're in, like that when you say yes to being a pastor, you're saying yes to walking with people. Nouwen also says like the start and end of Christian leadership is giving yourself to others. And so I think, some of the early days of ministry, I think I was striding a lot to live up to expectations that people had on me, or at least my perceived expectations.
Mm-hmm.
And so I felt like I was doing a lot for God without God. And it was just this drive of like, oh, well, so-and said I'm a great worship leader, so I got to live up to that. So-and-so said I'm a great preacher and communicator, so I got to live up to that. Or, people spoke this over my life. So like, it's like a double-edged sword. It's like, that was encouraging when people would share like, hey, I think God's calling you to ministry and there's something on your life that's encouraging. And then internally I was like, as again, tied to maybe some trauma as a kid of, oh, now I got to live up to that. And it just led me to a really dark place. And so I think to recognize, okay, I'm a pastor, I'm a leader, whether that's my vocation or not. So even those years in comms, it's like, I'm a graphic designer, but I'm a pastor. I can love people. I can walk alongside them. I can point them to Jesus. I can pray for them. I can call hope and future in their life forward. And so I think just starting to really understand that. And I think in many ways, it kind of came back to first love. Like we talked about Revelation, to kind of use that language. Like I think I just kind of came back to that first love of remembering those days as a teenager, of just living in the presence of God and just wanting people to live in that.
So it sounds like you needed to become comfortable in your skin. Mm-hmm. You need to understand the call of God to be a shepherd, regardless of vocation.
Yeah.
And when you did come back into a job that allowed you to be a shepherd, to walk more realistically versus other people's expectations, to try to be more realistic about your own talent, your own time, your own ability to carry it out.
Yeah.
Those are all important lessons to learn. How practically, though, did you prepare for this campus plant?
Yeah, I feel like...
Or maybe how did God, even without your knowledge,
yeah,
prepare you for this campus plant?
I think that's it. Like, I think God is always in the work of preparing his people. We read in the Gospels that often, Jesus passed by, Jesus passed by, Jesus passed by. And I think in my own life, I've reflected like, oh man, how many times has like God, been passing by with a great invitation and, I just wasn't aware of it. And so I think it's been a season of lifelong preparing and getting me ready through experience and through the wall and through pain and through heartbreak. And through seasons of great joy and great despair. And so I think it was just beginning to recognize all of those things and just be ready for it. So I remember when we started talking about this Abbotsford campus, really early on, I was like, oh man, I think Rochelle and I would be really great at that. I think that would be a really good fit for us. We've lived in Abbotsford as long as we've lived anywhere else in our life together. And so Abbotsford has always felt like home. Even the last couple of years, we've kind of resisted the urge to move out there, but we're like, well, we want to live where we pastor. Like right now we're 10 minutes away from the campus here in Langley. And so we're like, we want to be missional. Like it's one thing to say to a neighbor, hey, you want to come to church? It's 10 minutes down the road. And another thing to say, hey, do you want to drive an hour or 45 minutes to church with us? And so when we started talking about that campus, I think early on there was like this kind of spark in my heart of saying, hey, I think we're ready for that. And even just like looking at our experience in life and being a part of a church plant before and kind of having a gauge on what that looks like and what's needed there. And kind of was this moment of like, I think God's prepared us for this.
I remember you went to a church planting conference and you were sitting with others who were church planting, and you were struck by how clear you were on vision, values, and mission due to working at CLA. Like CLA had made those things very clear, and because you were an extension of CLA in this plant, you were like, I know what to do. Yeah. I know what the vision is. You talked earlier about the why. So basically you were saying, I know the why. Yeah. And I know the how. Totally. And let's get going. Totally. So being at CLA crystallized those things so that you could reproduce them.
Yeah. I think that's it. Our target launch Sunday is actually my 5-year anniversary being on staff at CLA. Wow. And so I think you're right. It was 5 years of knowing who we are and knowing who we not. I think when you like talk about vision and ministry as a whole. That's funny. Like, I live in a world with young leaders, right? Who are, it's all like, well, this is the new way of doing things. And it's like, no, the mission's been what Jesus did for 2000, like what 2000 years ago Jesus did. And then the early church did. Like, it's the same thing. Like, we can maybe put cute language to that, but if we're following Jesus and we're joining him in what he's doing as we look ahead to Revelation and the renewal of all things,
Right.
we can put whatever cute words we want on it, but it's the same thing. We're all doing the same thing. And I think sometimes that's our kryptonite. It's like, well, we got to come up with the new innovative. No, it's the same thing.
Yeah.
And Jesus builds his church. We gather on Sundays, and we gather midweek in homes, and we're missional, and we serve, and we bring
Raise
the
up
gospel
leaders.
to place. Like, we raise up. It's
Yeah.
the same thing that
that
we should
the
all
church
do.
has been doing for 2,000 years.
Yeah.
I think, though, that knowing it
Yeah.
in your mind and heart, and knowing what the next steps of gather, grow, serve, go
Totally.
are, help you. I also think that the great reality of church multiplication through campuses is the network that you get to work with. So you get a team.
Yeah.
And so I want to now, our time's almost up, but why Abbotsford?
Yeah, like I said, like, Abbotsford has always been a place for us where it feels like home. And I think that actually, like, knowing CLA, our heartbeat of being missional, being in our community, knowing our neighbors. I think for me, that was actually the thing that was most striking of, hey, because we're talking about campus multiplication. Like, as a church, we're moving into campus multiplication.
Right.
And so even from a leadership team level, like, we've talked about lots of different, localities that we want to see campuses come into existence. And even as we were reflecting in this process of getting the courage to knock on your door and say, hey, I think I might be interested in doing this, I think that's where we just kept on coming back to. It's like, well, we fit that community. That's where, like, we're Valley people. Like, that's our family. It's
so it
who
starts
we are.
geographically.
I think that,
and in the
that
heart.
was it.
And we have picked East Abbotsford
Yeah.
as the ultimate goal because
It's growing. And so Abbotsford's in a massive community plan right now. They want to break 200,000 population. And so they are expanding a lot. It's the hub of the Fraser Valley. And so they're building a new central hub of the city in East Abbotsford. And so they're projecting about 25% of the city's growth is going to happen in that area. So that's like 30,000 people, 10,000 homes. And so as we reflect at CLA, we have people in Abbotsford.
Right.
And I think that was part of us.
Right. So how many
Yeah.
people roughly attend the Langley campus from Abbotsford?
Yeah, it's roughly about 200 people
Right.
who attend Langley as, members and attenders, and who are based in Abbotsford.
And what's the spiritual need in Abbotsford? So there's population growth.
Yeah.
Some people think it's a Bible Belt. You know,
Yeah,
why would you
totally.
go to the Bible Belt? But it's not.
No.
So what's
Yeah.
the spiritual need there?
Yeah, I think there really is a significant spiritual need. I think there's history there, of course. Like, you have conversations with people and they're like, oh, I went to Sunday school and, have experience of being believers. I think there's a really big gap between being a believer and being a disciple. And I think that's felt in Abbotsford specifically. And I think there's a lot of disillusionment, if I can use that phrase. Abbotsford has a unique history around the local church, despite it being a Bible Belt in its past. And so I think there's people who are longing, and they have, like, it's been a part of their history, and they went to church growing up, and there's like this longing, but there's also this great resistance almost. And so by no means do we feel like we're going to fix the problem. Like, we're going as just a puzzle piece. Like, we're going to play our part, and that's it. But we know that there is some really big realities there to help people overcome that hurt and pain.
There's ethnic diversity. There's obviously thousands of lost people.
Yeah.
And there, as you have indicated, is a vacuum for people maybe who once had something but don't have it anymore. I say three things that are really important, because pastors from Abbotsford have talked to me, and you're launching on September 15th on Claiborne Road at an elementary school called
Abbotsford Christian.
Abbotsford Christian. And there have been other churches that have been in Abbotsford Christian School. So people are like, why? And I say three things right at the beginning. Number one, it's for our people.
Yeah.
And I want you to comment on your launch team in a minute. But we are gathering people from CLA who live in Abbotsford, but also people from CLA who have a vision to campus multiply.
Yeah.
These are people who live in Surrey, but they want to be part of your team. Yeah. So that's number one. It's our people. Number two is it's East Abbotsford, and there are not a lot of churches in East Abbotsford. We've looked for sites, we've looked for partnerships. It's not there, maybe as it is in other areas. And number three is that this is about evangelism. This is about people, as you said, connecting with their family, with people that they work with, people that are actually their neighbors, so that they can bring them to Alpha, so that they can bring them to special events, that they can be salt and light. So those three things alone set this campus apart geographically. Now, tell me a little bit about the launch team, and then I want to ask you two last questions as we close.
Yeah, we're looking to build a launch team right now of about 60 individuals who are committed to being culture carriers, pioneers, taking the vision of transformation, the heartbeat of CLA, to seeing that, aid to real human flourishing in the neighborhood of people who don't know God in East Abbotsford. And you're right. I think that's it, right? Is we touched on it before, like our heart is that we're missional. Like we want our people to live missional lives. We want our people to know their neighbors and to know their names and to have them over for dinner. Like I look at the life of Jesus, and he built the kingdom of God one meal at a time. And I think of the story of Zacchaeus all the time. Like today, salvation has come to your house. And so as Jesus came and he ate with Zacchaeus, it wasn't just a picture of salvation. It actually was a part of him moving towards salvation that day. And so I think that's it. We have people who that's their home, that's their community. And so if we can get them to rally around the heartbeat of transformation in the kingdom of God and to know your neighbors, it's really interesting right now. People don't know their neighbors anymore. Like even today, I was driving out here and I'm standing in the elevator and someone walks in the elevator and it's just right away to their phone. They didn't say a thing to me, trying to engage in a conversation with them. And then, they get out at their stop and, oh, have a great day. And it's like, oh man, something's lost. We're so close. There's population density is huge, but we don't know each other. Yeah. And so it's, how do we get, again, our people just to be missional and to know their neighbors.
So that's part of the launch team. They're praying.
Yeah, they're praying.
They're being a part of a serve team that will be involved.
Portable church.
On July 1st, we open up a giving opportunity for them to give to this campus. So tell me now about September 15th.
Yeah, September 15th, Launch Sunday. And so again, we're going to be in Abbotsford Christian, and so we're in a portable context.
What time is it at?
10 a.m. Just like.
And what can people expect?
People can expect really great coffee. It's Abbotsford, so we got to have great coffee. I think people can expect just a warm environment where someone wants you to be seen and known and loved. I think the greatest longing of the human heart is to be known and loved. And so the greatest fear is to be known and not loved. And so we settle for this. We settle for being unknown and unloved. And so I think just a space to find a friend and to, following Jesus has always been in community, and it's never been a solo journey. And if we think following Jesus is a solo journey, then I think we've really missed the mark and we lead ourselves to a lot of hurt. And so I think it's just community, great worship.
You're a great worship pastor, so I know that it'll have great worship and some times, because it's a campus, it will link
Yes.
with all the other campuses. But most of the time, our campus philosophy is that the campus pastor would work together on a team to preach the same similar messages across all of our campuses.
Yeah.
And so you'll get to do that. And there'll be some other pastors from Langley campus that will come out once in a while to help. I
that's
look
great.
forward to being out there.
Yeah, we look forward to
And
having you.
we recently announced that there's someone coming on part-time to do kids ministry. And so
Yeah.
this is really important, both
Massive.
for outreach. Last month, I interviewed Jenny,
Yeah.
who talks about the 414 window,
Totally.
talks about the importance of outreach and families. And so you're starting with that as a priority.
Totally. Yeah. And there's so many young families in Abbotsford, just even as in affordability. Like people are leaving west and moving to Abbotsford and to Chilliwack even just for affordability. So we know that that's a massive need for families. And you're right. It's a crucial time and really significant as we look at discipleship of a whole family too. And so aim to have, I'm so pumped. Mariah's going to be in the role and crushing it. And just know that we're going to partner so well with parents as well to see that, again, that reality of missional living really take root and just see people come to know the Lord.
In a very unique way, our campus in Abbotsford is going to have access to Summit Pacific Bible College students as well. So some of those students will be serving and will be apprenticing and will be under your mentoring. And I'm excited about that because the last 10 years have been really important. So thank you, Bryce, for coming and sharing about the last 10 years, about the ups and downs of it, and the exciting vision that I think is taken hold of your heart and taken hold of CLA to plant a church campus in Abbotsford. And we're praying for you. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
And we're believing for significant salvation growth and the leveraging of all the things that you've learned here and multiplying them as you go.
Yeah.
So
No, we're
may
excited.
God bless you in this endeavor, and keep praying for him. And if you're involved in church planting or campus multiplication anywhere in Canada or in our network, I'd encourage you to reach out to Bryce at CLA Church because he's learned a lot, and over the next few years he's going to learn a lot more. And so let him be a mentor to you. Thank you for joining us this summer. We hope that you're having an amazing summer, and we look forward to you joining us again in August. God bless. Thanks for listening to The Orange Pew. To stay up to date, please subscribe on Spotify, Apple Podcast, or YouTube podcasts. We'll see you next time.